Padarn the White. The tall figure in a monk's robe and carrying a staff crossed the ford on the River Ottery and strode up the hill towards the settlement of Petherwin in North Cornwall. Padern, or Paternus, had founded the settlement here in Cornwall. He was hurrying towards it at the moment because he'd been warned that the warlord Arthur had arrived at Kellywick and was asking questions about Padern. He'd arrived just in time. The little land was unusually active, and there were a great many horses and armed men strolling around the houses. A very anxious brother Martin met him at the gate. "The Lord Arthur is here, father, and he wants the robe, father. I didn't show him, father, but he has silver and other gifts in exchange, and—" "Peace, brother Martin, all be well. Where is he?" "I put him in the refectory, father. 2 chairs, equal, either side of the table. I brought the chest in, father, but I didn't open it. Was that all right, father?" "Well done, brother. Quite right. Is he armed?" "Yes, father, a sword and a knife, I think. But he told his men to wait quietly, and they obey him." That was a good sign. At least he hadn't simply taken what he wanted and burnt the village. "Perhaps you could suggest to the brothers that there will be a midday service, and that the villagers be discreetly gathered into the church." "Yes, father, at once." Padarn the White grasped his staff more firmly and stepped into the refectory. Arthur had been musing on the changes that he'd seen in Cornwall over the last 5 years. Then this area had contained only isolated hamlets, poor farmers scraping enough grass for a few sheep and panning tin in the sour streams of the moor. The monks from Wales and Ireland had brought a sense of community in each of their little settlements, and Arthur was beginning to see this as a valuable asset, building a people of the land, a kingdom. Kingship was more than a gang of armed men, the slash, burn and plunder of the Danes and the Norsemen, whom he now fought. He wanted to have a prosperous land, and to rule through respect, not terror. And the symbols of power helped with that, which was why he was here, of course. He rose to greet the priest with the staff who had entered. "Paternus sit gloria tua vita floriat. May there be glory to Padern, may thy life flourish." Padern nodded, concealing his surprise at the formal Latin greeting. "Ave pater Arthore, loena vis hagenor. Hail, Sire Arthur, joy and honour to thee." His response was formal in both Latin and Cornish. Both men sat, and Arthur spoke first. "We are delighted that you have survived the great pilgrimage to Jerusalem and returned with 2 gifts from the Holy Patriarch himself. It is in itself a miracle for which we give thanks. We know that such gifts will confirm the position of their owner and be a source of wonder and respect to all our people. We have come to take under our protection the special items which must be kept from the invaders." Padern looked sceptical. "I doubt my staff will be of interest to the Norsemen." "Father, the fame of your staff is greater than you believe. The story of how you used it to bring peace between the Irish warbands is already legendary, and the Welsh sing poems to its glory. No, father, the staff is a sign of your protection of your flock, and should remain with you. The tunic, however—" Arthur's gaze switched to the wooden box on the table. Padern sighed. "You have doubtless been told that it guarantees invisibility, makes men invulnerable, how it crushes the unworthy, how it confirms chastity, how it confers heroic status, and perhaps even grants kingship." He paused. "You have been misinformed." Arthur changed the subject hurriedly. "Oh, not at all. No, we all know the story of Padern Redcoat. No, nothing like that. But consider the importance of making the Patriarch's approval more widely known. Your little settlement here will benefit, and from the price I brought you." He indicated the items on the table. A fine wool cloak, 5 pieces of silver, and a book. Padern looked wistfully at the book. A manuscript in an excellent hand on parchment. The leather binding torn off, probably for the silver mounts and the gemstones with which it would have been lovingly decorated. The right-hand margins charred where it had been hurled into the flames. Norse plunder recovered, almost certainly. Arthur noticed the priest's attention. "A fine gospel according to St. Matthew, Father, and illustrated." He picked up the book and opened it at an exquisite miniature of the crucifixion. "It could easily be rebound. A rare item, Father, maybe the start of a library here in Petherwin." Padern had underestimated this warlord. He was educated and clever. Best to get straight to the point. "We acknowledge the generosity of your offer, but we must refuse it. The patriarch was most specific about the qualities the wearer of this garment must display. We feel your personal gifts are of a different nature." Arthur was surprised at the sudden refusal. "But it was always intended that this tunic should be brought to me. I am the leader, a warrior of proven success. The Vikings avoid our shores because I am known as a scourge of Dane and Saxon. How can it be that the tunic of a king should be worn only by a mere priest in an obscure clan? In where? Surely it should blaze in glory on the chest of a hero, a symbol to inspire our people." "You are, again, misinformed, my lord. I do not wear the tunic. It has not yet found its true owner." Arthur rose, and the anger in his voice was obvious. "As your guest, I respect the law of hospitality and offer you no violence here. Tomorrow I shall return to claim what is mine. Bring the tunic to the ford of the river at the 3rd hour of noon. There I will take it under my protection as its true owner, and it will be a light to the true Britons and a symbol of terror to the invaders." Padern also stood as the warlord turned to go. "Be at the ford, priest." "In where? I will be there, Arloth. Go in peace." Sometime after noon the next day, Padern walked down the hill to the ford. It had rained every day for the previous month, and the sky was overcast and threatening a thunderstorm. Where the path from Petherwin crossed the river, it extended as a winding causeway through the water meadow until it reached a higher point on the far side. The grass looked tall and green, but no cattle grazed here now. The ground was saturated and the mud like jelly floating on the water table. The river sparkled and danced as it made its way down to the Tamar. Padern was joined by Brother Martin, carrying a small casket, and the miller and his 2 assistants carried a box containing the tunic. All of them gazed across the river at the mounted war band assembled on the far side. Arthur dismounted, removed his helmet and walked to the edge of the causeway. It was well that the priest had come. He wasn't going to have to drag him out of his church. The box at his side looked like the one with the tunic. Perhaps Padern was going to hand it over now. A monk was coming towards him carrying a small casket, and he stopped 10 yards from Arthur, placing the casket on the ground. "Ave Pater Authore, Loena vis hag enor." Father Padern sends his blessing. "Knowing that you will be disappointed to be returning empty-handed, we offer you these gifts as a tribute and consolation, and will pray for your safe return to Kellywick." The monk turned and scurried back. Peremptory to the point of insult, thought Arthur. There would be no returning empty-handed. He motioned to one of his 2 companions, indicating the casket. "Empty it," he commanded, "just there on the ground where they can see it." The contents spattered onto the mud. Arthur stared across the river at Padern, and without dropping his gaze, ground the tribute into the mud with his foot and then stamped hard on it. The message was, he hoped, quite clear. Padern stepped to the edge of the river and raised his arms. "He who tramples the land will be swallowed by it." His voice rang out over the water meadow, and there was a moment of silence, and then a rumble of thunder. Trembling, Brother Martin unlocked the wooden box and carefully lifted out the fragile material. He eased the robe over Padern's head, and the folds fell straight and true to his ankles. A sudden shaft of sunlight caught the iridescent silk robe, and Padern the golden shimmered as the wind rippled through the delicate fabric. Then the clouds closed, and the first splashes of rain blew across the meadow. Arthur's breath caught at the back of his throat at his first glimpse of the robe, woven through a single piece, a seamless robe. It was a masterpiece of the weaver's art. Even without its magical properties, it was fit for the greatest of kings, the finest of warriors, the most generous of lords. This truculent priest was denying him his true inheritance before all the people. He replaced his helmet and drew his sword. "In where the patriarch's gift will grace our court this night." With 2 men behind him, he set off across the causeway. Above the wind, only the miller noticed a change in the song of the river to a deep, troubled growl. It no longer sparkled, but swirled darkly with a burden of soil, gravel and debris. Long before Arthur had reached the first curve of the causeway, the grass either side had sunk beneath wind-whipped waves, and he seemed to be standing in a lake that reflected the broken grey sky above him. The causeway disappeared as the water rose, and Arthur was half blinded by the driving sleet that stung his eyes. He focused on the image of the gold-clad priest and stumbled forward. He lost the path as one foot plunged into a deep, mud-filled pool. He nearly fell full length in the rising water. Is this the action of a king? The thought crossed his mind. To take a sword against an unarmed priest in order to steal his shirt? As a king, surely I should be protecting Padern against people like me. And as he pondered this, his feet found purchase again. And when he glanced at the priest, the robe was no longer shining, more a dim steel grey, and the priest had lowered his arms and appeared to be clinging to his staff for support. Arthur plunged forward again, realising too late that the water was now above his knees. All trace of the causeway had gone. Even if the tunic was his by right, surely he could have used peaceful means to persuade Padern to share it, for the greater good of all. The water was now above his waist, and he was struggling against the current. The river roared as rafts of dead branches and loose grass flooded across the former meadow. As he shook the water from his eyes, he could see clearly that the tunic was just grey woolen cloth, marked by stains. It flapped limply as the rain soaked through it. Then something strong and sinuous wrapped itself round his ankles, and he was being dragged into the mud. Another branch, he did hope it was just a branch, caught his arm, pulling him down, and the water crept up his neck and towards his mouth. On the bank beside Padern, the miller and his friends had pulled up their hoods against the rain and settled down patiently to watch the man in the lake drown. "I reckon he's got about 2 minutes before it closes over him. How about we dice for his stuff? Best of 3? Highest score gets the sword, second the helmet, and the last can have the jerkin." The 3 men huddled over the dice. Padern gazed at the doomed man. Was this what he'd intended? Was he so certain he knew the true owner of the tunic? And if he did, why on earth was he wearing it now? And why did it feel so heavy? Arthur could hear the rushing of the river past his ears, smell the wet weed flowing past his mouth as he strained to keep his head above the water. And time slowed, and he noticed that Padern was almost bent double by the river's edge, and the robe didn't fit him at all. It was filthy. It was slipping off him, and the hem was all frayed, and Arthur was trying to remember something about the hem of a garment. Then, framed like the picture in the book, he saw 3 men playing dice, and somewhere nearby a man dying, and there on the ground was a seamless robe, stained and muddy. It was that robe. It was both robes. It was the garment of a true king, a king of peace, justice, sacrifice, and mercy. And Arthur knew that no living man could wear that robe. Suddenly the water was dropping away below his knees, his feet freed, and Padern was reaching out to help him up the safety of the bank. Priest and king stared at one another. "I think," Padern said slowly, "we both need to change our clothes." And they walked up the path to Petherwin together. The miller shrugged philosophically. He wandered back downstream to his mill. No one drowned. No one got a sword or a helmet or a jerkin. Time to open the sluice gates, get the wheel turning again, let the river flow freely, sparkling and dancing, down to the Tamar.